Crap. Yo, in this recording I'm gonna talk about the interplay of forces in reality around you. Because in reality there's a lot of forces everywhere and they all play with each other, and it's like a Lyapunov fractal. And what you gotta do in this world is you gotta be your own force, and it's sort of like a heat, wind, or heat. It's sort of like temperatures. You got coldness and you got heat, and if you got a little something in the way when there's a heat wind, or let's say a cold wind, there will be a hot spot in the back of this little thing when the wind is blowing around it. And it doesn't have to be hot and cold winds, it can be normal winds too. If you get a house and you got a lot of wind, there's a lot of fields and there's a house and there's winds blowing, the winds are gonna go around this house and there will be a spot behind the house when there's no wind. So this house is its own force because it's not getting blown away by the wind. If there are really strong winds, trees can get blown down. So, and it's also like a Lyapunov fractal because everything around you is forces basically. And sometimes you counter negative forces, and what they want to do, the negative forces, is they have different techniques which they can use. They can, for example, form around you, cover the entire space around you, and then try to mislead you into looking into another direction so that you don't realize what's happening. And then they take advantage of you. They try to steer your cause of action. They try to take control over what you do by making you look in another direction, maybe making you aim energy in another direction so that you have a vulnerable spot, because every action has consequences, and every energy transmission creates different forms of energies. So when you transmit energy in one direction, you will have less energy on different places. And dark forces can take advantage of this by taking energy from your weak spots. For when you are charging energy in a certain directions, you will get these weak spots. And the dark forces take advantage of this. And they have a lot of different techniques and methods in order to take advantage of your weak spots. Like I said, they will form completely around you so that you think that you have to escape. You will be in a state of fight or flight, and you will probably choose flight. But you can also choose fight, and that is aiming energy in a certain direction. And sometimes you can fight the dark forces. That's what I do sometimes. But what it will do often is just make you always fight, so you'll get very used to fighting. So it will create a little force of its own, which is basically the vehicle that you are fighting in against the negative forces. So what you have to do is you have to have a lot of confidence and look the negative forces in the eyes and say, no, I don't want this. Then the negative forces might go away. And it's a little bit like if you do this and you're really, really confident, then you will automatically fight, but only when you have to fight. So if you fight, if it's your own decision to fight the negative forces, it might turn into a little loop of fighting, and when you fight, you aim your energy in a certain direction, and the negative forces can... One second here, let's see, okay, the recording is still on. And the negative forces can take advantage of your weak spots that appear when you aim this energy in this direction by fighting the negative forces. So what this can do is it can lead to nothing good. 1 second here, I'll soon be back. So if you always fight the forces, you will create something like a system where you're used to always fighting the forces. And it's a little bit like a river with ice on it. So you can walk over the ice, but the ice can break sometimes, and then you gotta freeze the river to create more ice so that you can walk on it. But what you need is you need to either swim in the river or have a boat. And if you sit in a boat, you'll be safe. Then you don't need ice, because ice is like fighting the water, and you don't want to do that, because then you can never see the river really. If you always have ice on the river, you can never see the water. Then there's always ice that you have to walk on, and you always have to freeze the river in order to keep the ice thick enough. So you want to learn how to swim, or the best thing is to be a sailor in a boat, because reality is a lot like a sea, and there's a lot of metaphors that you can make, and everyone is swimming around in their interpsychical space, and there are bad forces and there are good forces, and good forces can help you to gain confidence, which is very important when you have to deal with the negative forces. And dealing with negative forces is not really the correct word, because or it is, because they bother you, so you deal with them in order to make them not bother you. And by ignoring them is not always the solution, because if you ignore the negative forces, they can just do whatever negative stuff they want without anyone stopping them. So I don't recommend ignoring the negative forces. I don't recommend fighting it either, because like I said, that's like freezing the river. What you have to do is you have to realize that every interaction between you and a negative bump or force is sort of like a force on its own, and it's sort of like a tree that grows out branches. So what you have to do with these branches is sit on them and wait for them to grow out new branches, so that you can connect the branches back to where the tree started in the ground and where it grew out from. And if you do this, and it requires you to just, it's very hard to explain what you need in order to do this, because it has a lot to do with your state of mind. Sometimes you'll just be in a good, confident state of mind, and then the forces will even be scared of you, because they will look at you from a distance and see, no, this guy is not anyone that we want to target, and they will not touch you. And other days you will be in a not so good state of mind, where you're not so confident, and then the negative forces will try to get at you. And like I said, they can use many different techniques in order to do this. And so how do you get in the good state of mind? Well, that's a good one. First of all, you can start by being interested in the negative forces. That's a good one. You can start there. You can, for example, make sure to study and analyze and get to know the different techniques that they attack you from. And you should work a little bit like a system that is trying to survive in a new environment, by going through trial and error and seeing what works best for you in order to avoid these negative forces. You should try different techniques. You could try to fight them. You can try to feel them. You can try to ignore them. And you'll see what works, really. There's not really that much more advice that I can give to you. Of course, if you're confident and if you're high on life, feeling good, feeling cooling out, you know what I'm saying, then it will be a lot easier. And like I said, they will even be scared of you. So you don't have to do anything. So that's basically it. And it's really hard to explain the negative forces, because it's not a part of this world. It has to do with the interplay between timelines that are connected in such a way that reality is being played out through the script that some people call the Matrix. I don't believe in the Matrix. I think that this world is as real as any simulated world, because any simulated world is a part of the real world, and I don't think this world is simulated. I think this world is as real as you get. Listen to this. There's gravel on the ground, but what made me kick that gravel? Was it my decision? And if it was my decision, why come I make a certain type of pattern in my decisions on one day and a different type of pattern in my decisions on another day? Or maybe I'm not making different patterns in my decisions on different days. Either way, your decisions, that is basically the key entrance point to the world of good and evil forces in the interpsychical space around us in the world. And like I said, it's like a sea, and a little bit like the it's a little bit like the movie Matrix, when somebody sees all the Matrix code around them. Yeah, it's a lot like the Matrix, but this world is not simulated because of that. Well, I mean, what the hell is a simulated world? What defines a simulation? I don't even care, to be honest. Some people always talk about the fact that the world is simulated and they need to come out with that information. They need everyone to know it. But I say, why does it matter? As long as we... I just hear that there's a sound now from my fucking sitar here. I mean, if the world is simulated, use that concept for something. Don't just talk about the fact that the world is simulated, because concepts are made to be put into configurations with other concepts in order to express things for the purpose of covering up new land. It's about learning, lessons and experience, basically. So if you make up a lot of concepts without them fitting in with other pieces, like a pattern crystal or whatever you want to call it, then you can create a negative force which works exactly like a cockroach eating pieces of food on the kitchen floor, because those pieces of food end up there by accident and someone has to take care of that energy. So the key is to be cool, really, and think about where you aim your energy, and take life seriously.